Welcome back to the Legacy Podcast, guys. I'm your host, Vipul Basania, and today's guest is Pejman Ghadimi. He is an entrepreneur, investor, and best-selling author of the book Third Circle Theory. I'm going to put the link in the description of the show notes for this for you guys to check out after the show. He also went to the US as an immigrant, ended up becoming a VP of a bank, and built an education empire called Secret Entourage. Pejman, it's a pleasure to have you on, man. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
No problem. So just to get straight into it, the book Third Circle Theory, I mean, as I was reading it towards the end, you touched on a key thing that stood out to me, which was legacy. I mean, that's the message that I try and share with the whole concept of the community I'm building, Know Your Legacy. And it's to get people to start focusing on that, what their message is for their life. And I was surprised at the way that you phrased that chapter and the examples you gave about children and possessions, because that's something that I feel that I've been talking about, but no one has really understood it until I read it in your book. Now, you say that possessions and passing on possessions to your children is not what sort of defines you. That defines your success of the game of society, not the game of life. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's very obvious that money matters in the world, right? So I don't think we can ever say, oh, well, money doesn't matter. It's all about doing things. It's not about making money, because money does hold and play a significant role in the grasp of society. And we as a culture, as a human race, obviously have defined that money is a path to success or a recognition of success through society. And so one cannot ignore it, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is, I think the confusion becomes that most people never evolve past this game of constantly seeking money, that they believe that their legacy is established based on how much money they make. And ultimately then whatever they couldn't accomplish, well, their kids will continue to accomplish that and will carry that on. So if people are poor, I mean, poor financially, they'll typically say, well, I couldn't make it, so my kids have a shot. You know, I sacrificed my life for my kids, which is a cop-out, right? It's the easy way to say, yep. I didn't want to do shit, so I just had, I'm just going to blame my kid if he doesn't make it. But, I could do it, but I didn't want to. And then the other part is sometimes when we're rich on the other side, we also cop out the other way, which is, well, I've made a lot of money in my life, so my kid could have a better start, so he can go change the world. So it's like almost a cop-out in both sides. It's like if you're rich, then you could only do one thing because you never figured out what legacy meant. And on the other side, the same thing could be said for poor people that say, well, my kid will be the one to do something for us since I couldn't. But I think at the end of the day, one must understand what the word legacy means in order to be able to successfully leverage that with their children or themselves. And it's the idea of legacy is nothing more than something that survives past you, meaning like if you are gone, what will remain that people will be able to ultimately say, oh, this belonged to so-and-so. Like Disney has a very serious legacy. That's one of the extreme essences of like a perfect legacy, one that transfers through generations and generations of time, right? And can be kept. And then there's other people, just that would say, well, I wrote a book and the book helped billions of people. And that by itself could be a legacy because that book will be shared past your death. Just because you die doesn't mean book sales will end. Doesn't mean people won't share the book amongst each other. Doesn't mean a population won't be in a better place as a means of reading that book. So legacy isn't necessarily termed to money, meaning it isn't necessarily tied to a money transfer or the idea of having made money. But in many cases, there's a fine line between the two because obviously, if I'm writing a book that is changing the world, then obviously I'm selling enough copies. So I am making a ton of money doing it regardless, so money is always the reward of such. So it is attached to some degree of legacy, but the essence of legacy is the ability to survive past your shell, like past your vessel, your body. And as you are gone, whatever happens to you after, at least your words, your thoughts, and your memoirs are still stuck on this planet in one form, shape, or another.
For sure, yeah. In every episode, I think pretty much in every episode up to now, I've always said you have a short period of time to create something that's going to last a long period of time. That's pretty much what I've defined it to be. And we all have a certain period of time, whatever that might be for you, for me, for our parents. in that span of time, we have to make the most of it to create something that will live past us, that will impact the lives of people that are to come after us. So, I mean, for a lot of people, though, you talk about the fact that money is not actually tied to legacy per se, and it shouldn't be all that there is. But what about the individuals who are sort of struggling and they need money to actually survive, in the sense that they're working a 9 to 5, but they're unhappy because they're not making ends meet all the time? Like, those people are not going to sit around and think, oh yeah, let's think about changing the world, or let's think about my purpose. I just want more money. I want to get rich, and that's where the idea of get rich quick schemes seems sort of attractive, etc. So, I mean, how would we speak to people like that?
Well, I mean, that's 99% of the population, right? That's unfortunate, right? That's why there's only 1% that make it, and the other 99% who are still, I'm sorry to say, but literally turning in circles trying to look for a buck, right? Like trying to figure out what to do. I tell people this usually. You said something that I don't agree with. You said there's those people who don't have any money who are working a 9 to 5, right? And I don't think having a 9 to 5 or not is related to having money. I worked a 9 to 5. I was a corporate banker, right? I started at 18 in banking. By 23, I was making $250,000 a year, had $1 million bonus as a bank in a banking setup with no degree or anything else associated with it, and without a favor to start or anything. So, I'm not saying I am the exception. I'm not the rule. That is not every single human being. Obviously, there's only so many positions, and, you have to be willing to go out there. But I think that one of the things is making money is not tied to being self-employed or working for others. Making money is a byproduct of understanding your skills, talents, and finding a way to charge the world for it, even if it's in a corporate setting. I was a fantastic leader, a fantastic salesperson. I understood team management really well. A bank felt the need to pay me over $1 million to do that, and I don't think someone on the street would have paid me $1 million to do that for myself, So, how we leverage our skills and talents is what gets us paid, right? Then what you said earlier is, someone that doesn't have much money isn't going to be thinking about legacy, isn't? And I agree with that. I don't think they should be thinking about legacy, because at the end of the day, we got to start thinking about ourselves before we think about what to do for others. So many times we spend time saying, well, wait a minute, I want to help people. Well, why do you want to help people if you can't help yourself? Why do you want to give advice to others when you don't even know how to follow your own advice? I mean, these are very basic concepts that we're not talking about. We're saying value is about impacting 1 million people. And if we impact 1 million people, we'll make $1 million. So that's a bullshit statement, because value starts with understanding what your personal value is that you can provide others to begin with. So someone who isn't intelligent enough to learn how to make money should not be worried about legacy in the sense of what they'll leave behind, because A, they haven't mastered any concepts of how society recognizes success. Secondly, they haven't found any talents or skills worth leveraging so that society pays them a wage above minimum wage. And then thirdly, they also haven't really understood any of their skills that are worth leaving behind for people to learn from, or any type of talents that other will be like, oh, well, this is something I wanted to pass on to my kids, about this person. Because why would you want to pass on any of the values that a homeless person had that never fit into society, worked their asses off for 50 years, right, and never made anything of themselves? Well, you're not talking about them to your kids, right? You're talking about the Elon Musks, you're talking about the Amazons, you're talking about the people that are making and changing the world by their actions, not the people who are sitting there dwelling on why they can't figure out their talent. So if someone is poor out there financially, I typically tell them it's a byproduct of your inability to understand either what your skills and talents are or how to leverage them to actually get people to pay them. So the first thing I would say is, when you're not so financially well off and you're looking for your purpose in life, that by itself is a cop-out, right? Because people say, well, I don't know what my purpose is. That's why I'm not working my hardest at my job. Or I don't think this is my last job. Like, this is just a job I have. So I don't think I'll be putting all my effort because this isn't my career. How many times do we hear that, right? Like the guy that works at the grocery store says, wait a minute, like, I'm not going to be a bagger forever. Why would I come to work early and leave late for my boss? He's only paying me $10 an hour, right? Well, you see, that's the first mistake. Your boss isn't paying you $10 an hour. You're paying yourself $10 an hour. And when you're not showing up early, that means you're not worth anything to yourself either. You're not worth a better job. That's why you work that one. You're not worth more skills because you don't have any. That's why people gave you that job. And thirdly, you're not even worth actually investing into from someone else because you're not even then investing in yourself by showing up early and doing a good job. So typically the word purpose throws a lot of confusion to people because it forces them to think that God or some bizarre creature in the world will give them some kind of lightning strikes and suddenly they'll be like, oh my God, I get what I'm supposed to do in this world. And now I'm going to build this company and make billions of dollars. And Jeff Bezos did it and this guy did it and I can do it. But that's not how this works, right? It's not how any of this works. It feels like a bad Geico commercial, man. Every time it's like, you know, trying to explain to people that the idea of purpose is not a divine intervention. Purpose is the idea of feeling purposeful, meaning purpose means, let's say you're a grocery bagger at a supermarket. There is purpose in that. The purpose is to make sure that actual groceries go in bags. So figure out how to hold your purpose in that situation. Sometimes in a boat, let's say the one captain and someone rows the boat, each person has a purpose. Purpose does not mean importance. Purpose means what your actual actions are to be or what your role is in that situation. If we choose to accept our roles in each situation, if we choose to accept who we are in that moment or what our purpose is in that moment, then we grow what we call a purposeful mindset, a mindset that is driven on finding purpose in anything we do, so that when we are once faced with the idea of finding a greater purpose, one that perhaps is about changing the education system, launching rockets into space, doing thousands of weird things that nobody else understands why, but it makes sense to us, that time and only that time, we will have had the training mentally and physically to understand, to accept our role in that bigger picture and to fight for what we believe to be our true life-term purpose. But if we don't understand how to be purposeful, we cannot act on our purpose, even if its divine manifestation happens at some point in our life.
A lot of that makes sense. And as you were talking, I was thinking about that because it just then means that no one has an excuse to feel like they don't matter, almost.
Correct.
You know,
exactly.
like as you said, the most basic job of being a grocery bagger, you still have purpose in helping people
100%.
bag their food or their items to take home, right? So it's a very different way of looking at it. And it makes you feel like you're important regardless of the situation you're in, whether you're a janitor or a CEO, you know, the
100%. It's always in our hands, right? So many people use this idea that someone else will do something for us. That'll be the reason things make sense. You know, how many times do we hear like, I made a bad choice? No, you didn't. You made a choice. And the shit you did after that made it bad. You know what I mean? Like, what the choice itself is just a natural choice. You know, like if you think like I drink this water right here and I choke on it, it wasn't a bad choice to drink the water. It's just water. I just chose to drink it, right? How I drank the water blames me now for the actions I took after the choice, not the water for choking me, right? Water doesn't choke people, but stupid people that don't know how to drink it choke on it. So what I'm saying is, the point is, if we blame ourselves for what we are not accomplishing, for our shortcomings, instead of blaming things we don't understand or can't conceptualize into words, then ultimately we accept that we are also in control of changing what we don't like.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because it's almost like changing your perception on the situation, and the situation doesn't change. It's just how you look at it. So I'll just to go back a little bit. When I said about the 9 to 5, I didn't mean they can't or they don't make money or they're poor, because even where I work, I've got people sitting next to me making 6 figures. But typically from what I've seen, I'm not sure if you've been to London, but in London, traveling into the city every day, so many people are miserable and they're wearing suits and they keep themselves busy by playing Candy Crush or scrolling through Facebook rather than personally developing, growing, trying to figure out what else is out there in life that could interest me. You know, what else is there that I can grow into or learn about to help me in my job or outside of work start something, you know. So those type of people try and shut themselves off and use the fact that they're stuck in this routine job that they don't like as an excuse to not think outside of that, if you know what I mean. I don't know if you must have come
look, I mean, I lived in Europe, right? And I lived in France, and we have the same thing in America, right? I mean, there is definitely discontent from a lot of people in the job they have, right? Most people want freedom, but they don't even know what freedom means. Most people want something from work, and if they got it, they'd want something else. What I'm saying is the majority of people are unhappy with themselves, not their jobs. And as a result, their job is part of the equation, never the problem in the equation. The job you have is the job you choose. So if you really don't like your job, nothing prevents. We live in 2018 now. Google is worldwide, man. There's kids in India, there's kids in Africa that have computers and can get on Google and can learn a skill, right? So there's no reason why a guy in London or France, in the United States, can't get on Google and say, I'm going to find a new job today. Like, I don't like what I'm doing. I'm going to go be a waiter in a restaurant while I float myself to go back to school, or to completely start a business, or to get somewhere else and maybe have a different job, let alone, you don't need to go through the pain of starting a business. Maybe you just don't like where you're working, right? Maybe you don't like the people you're working with. But often I tell people that the reason you don't like it is because you haven't figured out what your role is in the grander scheme of that location or that organization. So you haven't accepted your role. You believe your role to be more than what others have told you to do. The problem is you haven't manifested the skills or talents to show them you can do more. You've only spoken of what you can do. It's like the guy saying, well, I can sell ice to an Eskimo, so I'm a great salesperson. Well, why the hell would an Eskimo need ice? He lives in ice, right? So that in itself is a flawed statement. So again, it's these falsified sense of ego and belief that we are greater than what we create or produce. We are just what we believe to be, not what our actual actions have told us we can be, that allows people to be miserable, thinking they deserve so much more, and they're not getting it. And then one point to add to this, 20 years ago, we didn't have as much misery in the workplace because we didn't have social media. And social media is a disaster for perspective, because what you did before is, let's say you lived in a town or a community and you lived in a $500,000 home. Well, most of the homes around you were also $500,000. So you were like, okay, I'm a banker, this guy's a doctor, this guy is like this. It was clear that everybody was a similar status, or possibilities were also as limited as seeing one of your neighbors get a Ferrari. You'd walk over there and say, hey, buddy, what do you do? What'd you do to buy that? And he'd say, oh, hey, I made some investments in the stock market. And you say, well, that's something to learn too. I can learn that too, So you would only consume information one step at a time, right? Now, social media has created this bullshit facade over these pretend lifestyles that don't exist. So what ends up happening is now the miserable guy that's going on the subway, who's like, man, I hate my job, is seeing this 19-year-old kid being like, yeah, freedom, I'm jumping in a pool, I have my Ferrari, which is all orchestrated bullshit, but that's what they see. And because they don't have the awareness training to know that it's fake, or that it's orchestrated, or that it's, and not all of it is fake, there's plenty of successful young people, let me not take that away from them. But what I'm saying is the majority of it, when you see social media, you don't see context. You don't see years before. You only see a photo. And the falsified sense that a photo is worth 1,000 words is wrong, because that photo is a fabricated photo that could really be just 1 second of a click, not really 1,000 words that came before it as to how it was created. So what ends up happening is people's confusion and their disconnect with the reality of what's possible has become so vast that people have given up on this idea of what's possible and have focused on just basic key tasks of accepting either where they are or if they're not. Either people push in the wrong direction for something they don't understand because they're like, that kid has a Lambo, I want a Lambo, or they're completely making the mistake of saying, holy crap, this kid's 19 and has got $1 million. I'm 38 and I don't have $1 million. What should I do? I don't know what to do. And then that's when we go back to what you said. That's where get rich quick schemes come from. It's the idea that you don't have enough time because you're behind, and here's an opportunity where you can make it up. So that's what they trigger when they're marketing those things, is they trigger that 30-year-old idiot who hasn't figured out how to get it. So now they're like, listen, that's how you get it. And that's not how you get it, but that's how you get it. And the guy's like, well, I'm behind. This is the fast way to get it. I'm in,
Definitely. No, it makes sense as to why people will do that. It's the whole concept, I think, from the sounds of what you're saying, it comes back to self-awareness, doesn't it? Understanding your skills and talents, who you are, what you're worth, and working on yourself so that when you go out into the marketplace or in society, you can look for the right things and you can look for the right opportunities because you're aiming at a level that you know that you're capable of aiming, rather than settling for something less and then regretting that later on and trying to make up for it by doing, get rich quick schemes and things like that. So, I mean, talking about that on the topic of jobs, just rewinding back a little bit from where you are now, you obviously came to the US at a young age with no formal education. So how does someone like that, there's plenty of people out there who have much more education than you, PhDs, masters, etc., but they're nowhere near as successful as yourself. So how does someone go from no education to getting quite a lot of common sense and street smarts and then ending up creating what you've created for yourself?
Well, the first problem is that what you just said is inaccurate. You see, I have plenty of education. I just don't have a lot of formal education. So that is the big difference, right? Education isn't just built off of a school, right? Like, it's not built off of what you learn in the four walls of an institution. Nobody can tell us what we can learn, right? People can tell us what we should learn, but it doesn't mean we have to listen. And then people can also tell us what are some of the basic principles we should know. And again, we don't have to listen. That's up to us to accept or not accept what we learn, right? But nothing prevents us individually from learning whatever we seek to learn. So if today you seek to learn how to build a business, even if your teacher in chemistry tells you this is stupid, it doesn't prevent you from going on Google and finding out how businesses are built, correct? So what happens is the willingness to get educated is the difference between me and other people. The enhanced amount of awareness I have towards my own growth is, again, a differentiator behind someone who goes to an institution, waits to be told what to do, what to learn, how to do it, versus someone else that says, okay, while I understand I can learn in school, I also understand I am not just limited to learning in school. And I think that's the big mistake. People go to school thinking they're going to learn to grow. They don't realize that the school system as a whole in society was not created to help you be successful. It was created to help you survive in an economy. It was created to help you survive in an environment in which you have to deal with other people. Now, why would you ever want to survive? Well, I don't know. That's maybe something you should have learned to do at some point. So the school system, their job is not to say, hey, I'm going to teach you how to be a millionaire. Their job is to say, what do you want your role to be in this world? And you say, I want to be a doctor. Well, I'm going to show you the path to starting to be a doctor. And then you'll have to find your own path from there. I'm going to give you the tools to be certified to be a doctor. Well, what kind of medicine you practice is up to you after. I'm not there to make sure you become a rich doctor. I'm just there to make sure that you have the tools to be able to practice medicine. I know plenty of doctors who are broke. I know plenty of lawyers who are broke. Doesn't mean they don't know the law. Just means that they went to school, they came out, and they practiced law. Practicing law doesn't make you get rich. Being good at practicing law makes you get rich, right? Having a lot of clients because you're so good at what you do and you're constantly educating yourself past what you learned in school by talking to other lawyers, trialing cases, practicing, reading more. These are things you can choose to do. So I've always owned my success. I have never waited for someone to tell me what to do to be successful. I've understood that when I was poor, if I worked a wage, I would make money. If I didn't work, I would make no money. So I chose to work. I didn't complain about, oh, the work is $12 an hour. It's not $8. It's not $15. It's not $40. I didn't complain because I couldn't buy a Lamborghini with the job. No, what I did is I said, if I don't work, I make no money. If I work, I make $10 an hour. Good enough. Let's go to work. Oh, I found a better job that pays me $20. Good enough. Let's go. Until then, let's not complain about the $10 an hour job because I don't have better. So it's the same thing with education. You see, I hate reading. I never read a book in my life. But that doesn't mean I've stopped learning. Just because I don't read a book doesn't mean I don't learn anything. Just because I don't listen to an audiobook doesn't mean I don't have conversations with really intelligent people and know how to ask the right questions by educating myself on the topic. So you see, like, someone can go and say, I want a mentor, I want a guy that'll teach me what to do, which is the first reason why you're going to be poor, because nobody can teach you what to do. Now, if you go to the actual table and say, hey, I've done my research about you, and I've seen that here's how you've done things, and here's what you've done, I have further questions to help me understand how to piece all this together. Now, that is going to make you successful. So what I'm trying to say is that a lot of times what we're looking for are answers, when instead what should we looking for is actually understanding. Because when we understand, we create perspective. And when someone gives us direction, they don't understand our perspective, our skills, our talents, and our ability to follow such instructions. So why does it matter if someone tells me, listen, you got to go get your law degree and you got to go become a lawyer? Well, how do you know I like law? And maybe I don't like law. How do you know that I like reading and that I like sitting there in trial? You don't. Just because you did it that way doesn't mean I'm going to do it that way. But if I understand what one possibility or path is, then perhaps I understand that that is just one way to get there. And if I speak to hundreds of people, then perhaps I see commonalities in the skills. Perhaps I see commonalities in the way they think. Perhaps I see commonalities in the investments they've made, in how they've moved forward. And then I can make my own assumption and be ready to take action when I am ultimately, specifically exposed to an opportunity to make such a decision. If in my life I'm exposed to thousands of people, hundreds of people who understand real estate and have made good money in real estate, and I have asked the right questions, and as a result now understand what triggers or what things are happening that make a good real estate investment, I don't have to go tomorrow morning and become a real estate investor. But what I can do is when a friend comes to me and presents me with a situation, or a person says, hey, my building's about to get evicted, I can quickly do the calculation in my head based on everything I know and tell myself, this is one of those opportunities that made my last 8 friends $1 million. Here's my opportunity to jump in on mine, understanding what I know today, right? And I have the ability to do that because I have the correct perspective and learning on this opportunity.
So what you're saying is essentially you took the time out to learn outside of the basic education they provide in school so that you could get ahead. So you sort of intuitively knew that if I'm going to get ahead, I'm going to have to take it upon myself to learn and go the extra mile.
Well, that and the fact that I was also poor, so I couldn't really go to school, right? So meaning I went to school to a community college. I looked around me. Nobody looked like what I wanted to look like in 10 years. None of the teachers had the things I wanted to have in 10 years. I started asking myself, what the hell am I doing here? Like, who do I have to go to that's going to tell me how to get to what I want to get to? So I said, if I want to be a lawyer, I don't see any lawyers around here. If I want to see a doctor, I don't see any doctors walking around here. You know, if I want to own a Lamborghini, I don't see anybody running around with a Lamborghini. So I don't understand what I'm supposed to learn here. Am I supposed to survive? I'm not really interested in surviving. So I don't think it can teach me anything in these 4 walls. Now, there's an opportunity cost to not surviving in those 4 walls, because what you're giving up when you don't go to school is structure and forceful learning. Meaning in school, you're told on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, you're going to learn and you're going to devote 5 hours to it. When you don't go to school, you have distractions, right? Your friends come over, there's hot girls walking down the street. You suddenly find Instagram and your 40 friends have events that weekend. Next thing you know, you spend 2 weeks learning nothing. So if you have discipline, then you can learn any day, anywhere. If you have no discipline, you're the type of person that needs to be told what to do all the time, then school is probably right for you, because you're probably going to eat your shit facing the wall with nothing left in like 6 weeks, because you won't have learned anything. And then you'll be stuck in one of those dead-end jobs. And one of your friends is going to say, you should have gone to school. And you're going to say, you're right, I should have gone to school. So don't be that guy. If you choose to not go to school, make sure you have a plan, not just a plan to make money, a plan to learn more, and a plan to get towards the right direction.
So what were the first steps that you actually took to go in the direction that you're saying then, like from school? Because you said obviously you're poor, so you had no choice but to sort of find your own way at that point, because everyone around you didn't actually have what you wanted. So what were the first steps? So like if there's someone else out there right now that feels the same way, they're looking around, they're thinking, right, you know, there's no one around here that I think I should take advice from. What do they actually do? Because a lot of the listeners will probably be in that position. I mean, what would...
We live in 2018, man. You have access to LinkedIn. You have access to Facebook. I get 600 DMs a day. What do you do? How can I do it? What can I do? You know, like, listen, you can reach people today. It's not what it was back when I was around, when we didn't have any of that crap, right? I couldn't reach anybody. I had to go to my work and be like, who's doing anything here? Who's the best manager? I got to talk to you. But in general, like what I'll tell people is learning is all around you. And this is the part we miss. So here's what happens. So let's say you're at a job, and let's go back to that poor kid that's working at the grocery store bagging bags, right? that sucks. I mean, you must feel like shit, right? You're sitting there, you're like, I don't like my job. I don't think it's challenging. I'm not making enough money. Everything's going wrong. So that idiot is probably going to pick up the phone, get on Instagram, and be like, I want to reach the richest guy and be like, how do you get successful, man? And he's going to get his DM deleted and he's going to disappear and he's going to feel insignificant and no one's going to answer him. So there's 2 steps that kid needs to take. First off, he needs to look around him. In that job he's in, every position above his pays more money for the same amount of time sitting in the same location. So even if he can't get another job, start talking to the general manager. Start getting friends with people who are like managers, associate managers, sales managers in that same store you work at. Maybe showing initiative in learning about the job you actually have will open an opportunity to actually get promoted in the job. And even if you hate that next job, you'll make $2 more an hour for hating the same amount of hours you're spending in that place. And that by itself is a step forward, right? That's the first. It's a baby step, but still a step. So it creates change. And that's important. We need to grow. And growing means going into new positions, trying new things. And what happens is if you continue that trend, next thing you know, you look 2 years later, you're like, I'm making double what I was making then. And all I did was talk to my coworkers. And all I did was show interest in learning more about their jobs. And what happens is eventually in that same company, you'll find maybe a job that'll trigger your skills that you like. You might be the store manager at some point and might be like, when you were a grocery bag, you were like, I'd never want to do that for 40 grand. But now you're looking at it and you're saying, now that I'm doing it, I actually like my job for the first time. And I'm getting 3 times what I was making a year ago. So maybe it's not that bad, right? Imagine the possibilities in 5 years now if I've gotten that far in 2. So what I'm trying to say is the opportunity of growth comes from the possibility of understanding that growth is possible. And it's not as far as looking on Instagram, finding a billionaire and saying, what do you do for a living? The other part is that we are in an information revolution. Anyone can access Google to learn about anyone. If you genuinely have interest in learning from people or about people, don't DM me saying, what do you do for a living? How do you have a McLaren? How do you have this car? I don't understand. Don't do that, because obviously if you cared, you would actually pick Google, put the name of the person. It would tell you enough about them, right? And then on top of that, you could read my books, try to understand what I'm about, right? And then if you still have a question and you DM me and say, listen, PJ, I read your 2 books, great information here. I don't really understand that. Here's my situation. You're going to get a response 90% of the time more than if you just DM me something ignorant because you're looking for an overnight answer to your miserable life, right? So what I'm saying is you have a choice to either own your success and people who are successful will notice and will help you along the way, or you have an opportunity to just seek that instant answer that is the miracle cure for your problem, which is yourself, and that's never going to get cured, and just get rejected over and over and eventually fall in this loop. It's the same thing we talked about at the beginning, you know?
That's, yeah, I was going to say that's the thing, because I think you can tell me if you agree with this or not, but I think when you transcend certain levels and a certain level of mindset and you reach the level you're at and you're that far into your journey, you can recognize those people from quite far away. Those who realize that success is not overnight and those who realize it's over time. Because the way
it takes me 10 seconds. Yeah. I mean, the moment someone answers, I know exactly immediately that they're either lost or they're worth investing 5 seconds of my time to answer, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. So yeah, a prime example of you saying that, you know, we're in an information age with direct access is how me and you spoke. You know, I started in the exact same way, you know, and I reached out to you, but then it wasn't about finding out, you know, how do I buy a Lamborghini? It was more about how can we provide value together to listeners and then put a message out there. And so I think that's what people need to realize, because so you do have access to pretty much everyone's email and DMs. You can reach a lot of people, but if you're saying the right things and showing the right attitude, people like yourself will open up and think it's actually worth my time helping that person. And then you enjoy it because you feel like you're providing value back to society or humanity.
100%. I mean, why do I write books, right? Yeah, I write books to help people, right? So it's the same thing. I mean, why do we speak? Why are we doing a show, right? Because we want people to understand something. There's a message to share. So the same message can be shared individually or in a group setting. The point becomes that the person asking for the help needs to own part of that process if they expect to get an individual lesson that everyone else has to listen on a podcast for, or has to go in person to an event or something to get the same information. So don't think of it as you're entitled to the information. Think that you're privileged to receive the information. So ask yourself, why are you worthy of receiving that privilege over every other person that has sent the exact same DM seeking the exact same answer when it's not getting there?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So I wanted to touch a little bit on belief, because you covered that in your book as well. And I was just wondering, someone like yourself who comes from the background you have and has attained this success at such a young age, I think most people would sort of define that as modern day success almost. What was it that kept you having belief in yourself? Because you didn't have, as you said, a formal education or the best of upbringings, but you still had enough belief in yourself to make a success out of your life at early as 15 or 16, wasn't it, from the telemarketing job? And then from there, obviously, going into the PP.
But to correct you, I didn't believe in myself. I never believed in myself. What I didn't believe in was the alternative of what I was doing. So in other words, I didn't believe in the idea of not working. So I went to work. So in other words, I didn't believe in being poor. So I found a way to make money. Get it? The point is, it's always the opposite. So it was never like, I have the confidence, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to build this, I'm going to do that. But I understood the alternative. If I don't go to work, I don't make money. If I don't figure out how to build a business, I won't have a role to fulfill for myself. And I don't believe in that. So I got to go do that.
Right. Okay. Sure. Yeah. So it's sort of figuring out what your beliefs are about the situation you're in, almost like this is the right situation. There is nothing else, basically, almost like, or the opposite is not what I want. Is that what you're saying?
Right, exactly. The opposite, the idea of not taking action is not what I want, because it leads down a path that doesn't change, right? Taking action requires some sort of belief, but at the same time, belief also comes from just the possibility, the understanding the possibilities. So if you surround yourself with people who have done it, like, in other words, put it this way, if we see that a kid that's 22 has built a business and has made $1 million, then everyone else says, well, I can build a business that makes $1 million by 22, right? So that's general belief. That's like seeing to believe, right? Like, meaning once you see, you believe. So people who live in expensive cities like New York, Florida, Miami, etc., end up seeing success all around them all the time. They're like, oh, I saw a 17-year-old driving a Ferrari. Oh, I saw a 30-year-old driving a Maserati. So I understand what's possible. So now I'm not so afraid of attempting something, because I understand its possibility. If we see an athlete that's like 5 foot tall running like a mile in like 4 minutes or for whatever, then we say, okay, well, now I know that's possible. So the record to beat is 4 minutes. It's no longer, you see what I mean? It's no longer 5.5, which is my best. It's like someone has proved what's possible. So that's a general belief. Then the other part is you have to ask yourself, what's the alternative of trying? So let's say you're, like, for example, let's say you see a girl in the street, right? You see a hot chick walking down the road. That happens in London just as much as it happens in America, right? That's the beauty of it. You're smiling. You're like, yeah. So you see a girl walking down the street and you're like, damn, she's hot, right? What is the alternative of not asking her out or having a conversation? It is guaranteed that you will never meet her, and it is guaranteed that you will never go out on a date with her, and you will never have any of the situations you want to have happen to you with that person, because you are not even going to try to engage in a conversation. Now, if you try and you fail, that's fine. You failed. That's okay. But if you don't try, it is a guaranteed failure, correct? So the question is, which can you live with the most? Knowing that you tried and it didn't work, or knowing you never tried and you never knew what was possible?
Yeah, now it's sort of getting into the realm of regret, thinking about that. And then that doesn't just apply to what you're saying, small situations like,
No, it happens to everything.
Yeah, exactly. Any sort of career path or life or risk you want to take in terms of following your dreams or whatever it might be, it comes back to thinking, what if?
What if? Exactly.
Do you really want to ask yourself that do you really want to be in a position where you're asking yourself that at the end of the day? I don't think so. I don't think you want to, either. So
exactly. So, and that's the point, man. If you want to, I always tell people, if you want to fuel your belief and you haven't seen or don't have access to people around you that can do that, then let me tell you one thing you can do to change your life right now, and it'll completely change how you perceive everything. Stop believing in absolute truths. That is the number one killer of belief in everything else. Meaning, stop saying or believing that there's only one way to do something, or that there's a right way or wrong way, or this is the way things are. You know, like religion is everything, or government is everything, or this is nothing, or I hate this, or I love that. Stop believing in this inflexibility and unadaptable mindset of believing in absolute truths. There's no such thing as absolute truths. Even truths that we've accepted as a society, such as red light means stop, green light means go, is not an absolute truth. It is just an acceptance of past perspectives, and of a massive past perspective that has been generally accepted as a rule of conduct. It is not right or wrong to run a red light or, stop at a green light. It is simply an understanding that if you do so, there's a consequence, because everyone else has accepted that that is the way we do things. Now, in a general setting like a traffic light, maybe you don't want to be an idiot and stop on green and fly by red, right? But in business, it's the exact opposite. Just because someone has done something doesn't mean you'll duplicate it. Just because someone hasn't done something doesn't mean you can't do it. So if you start believing outside of the realm of absolutes, you start believing that anything is possible. Now, doesn't mean you'll do it, but at the same time, it doesn't mean it's impossible. So when you believe something is possible, allow your curiosity to further extract how it becomes possible, and not rather, is it possible?
Yeah, I think that's a lot for people to think about there, because there's a lot of questions you can ask yourself. When curiosity comes into play, there's nothing that's not up for question, Pretty much everything, apart from the laws of physics. But then I think that, as Jeff Bezos says, everything's up for question apart from the laws of physics. But even then, there's stories, like back in the day, of people transcending certain things in the laws of nature as well, in terms of healing themselves, etc. So it's just, it all comes back to sort of having perspective of self-awareness and what you think is possible based on your perception of how you're educated, because that's what you talk about in your book as well, because it all comes back to how much do you know. Because if you're only surrounded by people who are working at $5 an hour, you think, if the person who's making the most is only making $5 an hour, maybe that's all I'm capable of making, until you start expanding. And I think that's where Google and the internet and being able to DM people comes in handy, because now there is no excuse, because you can see people all over YouTube for free who are living lives that are past what people around you might be living. And so,
and it's also that you can see a lot of times that money brings money in major cities, right? Because everyone's motivated to the same level. You're seeing people around you who are making $3 million. So it's like, well, man, I'm not making enough, right? But in poor cities where everybody's like struggling to find a job, and, everybody blames the education system, everybody blames the lack of jobs. But in major cities where everybody's making money, people are like, yeah, I just built a new company yesterday and hopefully it'll work, So the mindset is so different, because the belief in absolutes is non-existent anymore, because people have seen and believe that others have seen and believed things that weren't necessarily true or false, and as a result have done something. So they trust in the ability to look past their beliefs often.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to ask you this now. The biggest belief that I think a lot of people carry, which I think is insane, is that money equates to happiness. The old age saying, money equates to happiness. Now, you've obviously had your fair share of money. It's probably fair to say it's been above average. But what is your take on that statement? Because you've now seen the other side, and you've seen the other side of you being poor and starting from a very humble background. How does your level of happiness change as you sort of work up that ladder?
Money doesn't buy happiness, but money does buy circumstance, and circumstance buys happiness. So technically, money does buy happiness if you think about it that way. Because if you look at it, like, look, I give the example of a rich couple versus a poor couple. And I like using human examples instead of object examples like cars and stuff, because that's one-sided. It's a human in a car, not a human in a human. But let's say you fall in love with this girl, right? And you have a ton of money. So you're spending your time not worrying about finances. You're going to, like vacations, and you're having fun together. You're going to dinners. Well, what are you doing? You're buying the circumstances that allow you to fall in love easier, faster, and better, right? Because you have nothing to worry about. Versus you have this other angle where you're super poor, living in an apartment, you're both working, you never see each other, and then when you see each other, you're talking about who's going to pay the water bill. I mean, when is love going to have an opportunity to form, right? So the question is money buying happiness, or is money buying the circumstance that allows happiness to occur? You see? So in the same way, it's not a direct correlation, but it's indirectly exactly what's happening. Now, I've been poor and I've been rich. I prefer being rich every time. Obviously, the idea that what money does is it facilitates leverage. So in other words, like, money allows leverage in everything. It allows you to leverage your time. It allows you to leverage your feelings. It allows you to leverage everything and anything that happens around you. It allows you to even leverage other people to do things for you. So I've always told people, if you don't know how to make money, you don't know how to survive and fit in a society. So it doesn't matter that you want your purpose or legacy. First, learn to fit in, meaning first learn this universal language that everybody understands, money. Learn it, read it, make it, and once you've made it, then use those strategies to actually focus on creating change and impact. Would Elon Musk be able to have SpaceX and Tesla without money? Hell no. Would Jeff Bezos be able to change the world, without money? Of course not. So what I'm saying is, have the ability to make it, and then don't link your purpose to having to make money out of it. Like, look, I make a lot of money in the luxury lifestyle industry with cars, watches, like everything from concierging to a bunch of IT businesses and everything in between, right? But those are not my purpose. My purpose to help people with my books, my education, and everything is the smallest piece of my business portfolio. Those companies collectively make less than $10 million a year and barely pay me nearly what I make from one of my other companies without even working there. So the argument would be, well, you're making money, why are you doing this? Well, because I care. I believe my legacy to be teaching. So I want to teach people. I am learning how to teach and still make it profitable. But at the same time, I'm also learning that my lifestyle and what I want does not have to come from teaching. There's other ways for me to make money and then also do what I love and follow through on my legacy. It's the same argument that kindergarten teachers are always going to be poor because they've thought, they've decided to teach. Nothing prevents a kindergarten teacher to have a Shopify store and make $3 million and still love teaching kids and still show up to work every day for $30,000. If people would say, well, that's a waste of money, but people's legacy and purpose isn't to educate children, right? That person's is, so they can choose how they spend their time, but they can also choose to not be a victim of saying society has deemed that teachers only make 30,000 pounds a year. I am now lost and I have only to make 30,000 pounds because I chose this path. That is not true. Life is not linear, a one-to-one relationship between yourself and the things you want. Life is about being adaptive. It's about understanding. It is about pushing the possibilities of what you're capable of. And what you're capable of is not dictated by society. It's dictated by your abilities, your skills, and talents. Find what those skills and talents are. The world will pay you thousands, if not millions of dollars for it over time. Don't find them. You'll find a lot of jobs. Get good at them. At least you'll make a couple of $100,000 in the process and you won't be poor. And that's better than being poor. So if you reject the way the process works, you'll never get to the end of it.
So what would you say your skills and talents are?
Teaching.
So would you say that was the case right from the beginning, from your first job? You realized that Now looking back, it was always teaching.
You see, it's easy in the first jobs to blame it and say, I want to be a leader. I thought I was such a good leader. Leadership is my skill. But leadership is not a skill. Leadership is just part of a combination of skills. And so I had to look deeper in that and say, what part of leadership, what was in leadership that made me a good leader? And it was always teaching. In my first concierge business, that's now making $50 million each year without working there, I still literally sit there and teach customers and teach employees how to be better at what they do. I don't sit there and actually do sales, marketing, and everything. I teach it instead. In everything I do on my online companies, they're all focused around education, teaching, even if it's something as simple as teaching people how to buy exotic cars. You may think that oh, well, that's not teaching. Of course it's teaching. I'm not telling people to buy them. I'm teaching them how to do it, right? And as a result of it, I'm getting a ton of money for it. So what I'm saying is, the point is that if you figure out what you're good at, then you figure out how to leverage that in any setting you are. There is no correlation between a luxury lifestyle concierge service and teaching. But there is, if you look deep enough internally on how you and what your role is in that business. Just because I own that business doesn't mean I have to be the CEO of everything in that business. My role and my job is to teach. Maybe I'm not that good to deal with customers. That's why I have a CEO that runs it, because I don't have patience for people. So my skill and my talent is not to have patience in customer service and be kind to others. I have zero empathy for people. So that's not going to work very well in a business when people are paying me tens of thousands of dollars to feel bad for them, right? Or fulfill their needs, right? So I don't position myself in my business in a way where I have to do the things that I suck at. Instead, I say, what is my talent? Where is my talent exercised in this business? Now, any talent that I'm missing, can I find someone that can prosper from my talent in that business and yet can fulfill it with their own? Meaning someone who loves learning because I'm a teacher, but simultaneously is also having an extension of talents that I can use to ultimately do the things I don't want or like to do.
Yeah, so it all comes back to self-awareness and realizing what you're good at. And then what would you say about people that say you should double down on what you're good at, which it seems like what you've done, or on the flip side, find out what you're weak at and work on it?
Well, I think you need to be aware of what you're weak at, and you need to understand what those things are. Like, for example, in a business, you may not be good at marketing, right? Like you may just not, that's not your thing. That happens, it's possible. Most people are not. But you shouldn't just ignore marketing and say, I'm going to hire a marketer to do my marketing. You should understand and seek to get better at marketing. And then you should hire the best people to do your marketing. So, or you should hire the best people and teach them what you know so they can do your marketing. But bottom line is, you shouldn't be blind as to what is needed for you to get good at. But you don't need to exercise it or work on it every day, because that's not where your strength is either, right? If your strength is in marketing, the amount of time you're spending marketing is probably not going to be worth the ROI you're getting for your time, right? So what I'm saying is, but you can't ignore what marketing is and say, I just don't care. I'm going to find the best guy and he'll do it for me. You have to understand what it is, understand how it works, and then say, my time is not better spent here. I'm going to hire someone to really manage that, because it's not my forte. But when they come to you weekly with reports, you can't just ignore and be like, yeah, you're doing a good job. I assume this is good because we're making money. You know, you have to be able to understand what you're reading, be educated about what you're dealing with, even if you're not an expert in it. So be educated, but don't become an expert in things that you don't need to be good at.
At least understand the basic foundational concepts, so you know what's going on, because at the end of the day, it's your business. No one else is going to care about it as much as you do.
Exactly. So, yeah. So you don't want to be the jackass when the coder is like, yeah, it's going to take 8 weeks to do that. And you're like, okay, I guess that's wonderful. 8 weeks seems fast. And then 5 years later, you talk to a guy who's like, yeah, I could have done that in 3 days. And you're like, God damn it, I lost 5 years of my life waiting for a guy that told me it would take 8 weeks every time when it took 3 days, you know?
Yeah. That makes sense. So just on the topic of teaching, so how did that lead you to create Secret Entourage? Because that's basically a worldwide platform of teachers, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is. Like, I understood one time that I wasn't good at everything in the world, right? I had a heightened self-awareness. I had a great amount of skills I could teach, but I didn't have a track record in every industry in the world, right? And while I can certainly get out there and teach people how to open restaurants and do things that I've never done, I don't think it would be fair, because I've never experienced it, right? So today in my academy, I teach everything I know. And of course, I recruit people who are experts in their fields, who have had track records in their fields. I verify that track record. I have very level-headed conversations, because even though I'm not an expert in their business, I understand business universally, which is what I talk about in my new book, Radius. But I understand these formulas and what makes a successful business. So I'm able to have very level-headed conversation with these people and make sure they're not bullshitters and they're not liars and they've really accomplished something. And then as a result, I allow them to teach younger people how to be successful in their fields. And so together, to this day, I've brought together over 300 incredible teachers. I've brought a community of over 35,000 people worldwide that are all focused on helping one another get better at being entrepreneurs. My goal is to create, my goal is not to create millionaires out there, but it's to create $1 million CEOs. I'm a believer that most people's businesses will fail if they don't hit the $1 million mark in a 12-month basis. So if in your first 12 months, you don't ramp up to hit your $1 million mark, you're probably going to be out of business in 3 years. So one of the things I've learned is that hitting the $1 million mark is so easy that the only reason you're not hitting it is because you either have the wrong idea, you haven't done your market validation, there's hundreds of things you could have done beforehand to make sure you hit that $1 million mark. So my goal, that's why one of my slogans is always build your first $1 million business, because regardless that you own a business or that you haven't even had an idea, you need to build at least $1 million business in its first 12 months so that you can find your role in that business. You can have enough processes and transactions to be able to say, here's my role in my business, here's how I scale my business. And then 4 years later, you're still in business versus everybody else is out of business. So we have a community dedicated to helping people establish their $1 million business in whatever one of the 250 fields we cover they want to start in, regardless that is fitness, service provider, app designer, app coder, app creator, venture capitalist, doesn't matter. There is an opportunity for people to understand how these businesses work and also to connect with people who have had massive levels of success in their business.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it sounds like it's a value pack platform that covers pretty much everything from start to finish in business, regardless of the industry that you're looking to get into. So, I mean, where can people find that typically if they want access to your material?
I tell people it's really easy. I give people a couple of steps. Either go to secretentourage.com and investigate it, get familiar with it. It's all, most of the content there is free. If you're like, hey, I'm ready to build $1 million business, then you can do you can either go to secretacademics.com and then you can get the entire package on everything you need to do. Or because there's always that one guy that's a skeptic who's like, I don't know, man. I don't know this guy. He's spitting a good game, but I don't know, man. I'm not investing $100 of my money on nothing, Okay, so the first thing I'll tell people is if you don't have $300 to invest in yourself, then you have a different problem than whatever the hell I'm selling. It doesn't matter what I'm selling. That's a personal problem. That's not a PJ problem. The second thing, though, just remember this. For those of you that are skeptics out there, go read Third Circle Theory. That book is a reflection of yourself and where you are in life. If you're still a skeptic after that and you still think that there's something in there you didn't learn or it was a waste of your time, then read Radius, because Radius stands for Reaching Across Different Industries, Uncovering Solution. It's a universal formula that I've used for every single business I've built. These are just 2 books. They're cheap. You can't go wrong. And if you hate them so bad, email me. I'll refund you. It's that simple, even if you're all the way in the UK. I mean, I believe in my product so much that this is actually funny. I'll tell you a story a lot of people don't know. My first book, Third Circle Theory, sold now almost over, I think, 500,000 copies today. And it's self-published, right? And one of the things I tell people is they ask me, how did I become successful? The first 100,000 copies, I told people this, and they still don't believe me. I told people, if you read the book and you don't love it, I'll give you $100. And they said, hold on, you want to give me $100 for reading a book? I say, yeah, you pay 20 for it, so you're going to make $80 for wasting your time. In the first 6 months, I sold 100,000 copies. People took me out on this. They said, oh, yeah, I read it. And guess what happened? 3 people came forward and said, I want my $100. Because that's how much I believe in my content. I don't write to make money. I write to teach. And that's one of the big differences in what I do. I write to teach. I don't write to make money. All the proceeds from my books go to helping low to moderate income communities from across the country undertake entrepreneurship programs for kids who don't have the opportunity to learn in their communities because teachers are not taking extra time or do not have after school, activities. So kids end up in gangs and stuff. So if people think I'm getting rich off my books, you're very wrong. I make a ton of money in the world. None of it is from writing books. And that's fine. That's the beauty of my life. I don't have to make money off my books. I make money off my other businesses. But that said, read those 2 books if you're skeptic. If you're not, if you're ready to build your business, then head to secretacademics.com. And that's where the whole package is, everything you need from A to Z.
Awesome, man. So just to wrap this up, there's three questions that I always like to ask everyone. So I'm interested to see what you have to say. So the first one is, with all the knowledge and the experience you've gained along your journey so far, if you were to go back to your 18-year-old self, 18-year-old PJ, what would you tell it?
I would tell it, find what your skills and talents are. Don't focus so much on your income. I've said that over and over, but that's where the money's at, man. Figure out your talent. People will pay you for it.
Okay. Yeah. And just on the second question, it's, if you could write something now and put it in a time capsule for your great grandchildren to read, if you could write anything to them, what would you say to them?
Great grandchildren. Jesus, man. That's like so far ahead. I mean, I don't think, I don't know what the world will look like by that time, but all I can tell you is that I think the only advice I'll give every single human being 30, 40, 50 years from now is never be a victim. You're not a victim today. Don't be a victim in 100 years and 300 years and 500 years. Always find a way to control what's happening to you, accept it, and change it.
Yeah, so it always comes back to you having the control, not
Always.
someone
Because
else.
look, if you accept that in life, then you accept you can change it. The moment you give up the control is the moment that you accept that whatever's happening to you is happening to you and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And the last one, taking a full circle back to the start, you're 90 years old now, PJ sitting on his deathbed. What do you want your legacy to be? What message do you want to leave the world?
You want to laugh. I was on my deathbed 4 years ago. So I got cancer 4 years ago and I actually, knock on wood, survived it. And the one thing that I was actually very proud of is when I got cancer, the first thing that happened is most people flash their life in front of their eyes and they're like, man, I wish I would have done that. Dude, it gave me a sense of relief. I'm 10 years ahead of anything I wanted to accomplish in the small time I had. It's okay. If I hit the shitter and it's time to go, it's time to go, But I think that, my legacy has already started taking place with Third Circle Dairy, helping so many people. I think what I would like to see happen is a society that accepts Third Circle principles more than it accepts things like religion, schooling, and things like that. And the concept is not that there's something wrong with religion or belief. It's that every time we look at those things for answers, we are again giving up control and again expecting someone else to make things happen for us. And I would love to see that my books are helping people understand how to own up to their destiny, own up to their results, own up to what they're creating. And so if they learn nothing else from me in the next 50 years, if that's how long I have, 20 years or 5 years, at the very least, take these books and take back the control that the world has taken from you by injecting it with fear and all of this bullshit over and over, and instead learn that anything's possible as long as you believe it to be, and anything can be changed as long as you understand that you're not a victim.
Powerful message to end it with, man. Powerful message. Love it. So, Pejman, thanks a lot for taking the time out again, man. I think everyone's going to enjoy this one. We covered a lot of deep stuff. So, no, thank you so much for taking the time out to be here today, man.
My pleasure, buddy. So I'll talk to you soon. Enjoy the rest of your night.
All right. You as well. Take care.
Bye-bye.